Sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. I think I found it now. What I've been looking for.
What is up, Survivor Thrivers? Authentically Me, Regina B, is back with another video. How are you? I hope you've been well. I hope you've been in good health. We are here with episode 5, Genesis chapter 5, continuing on our journey through the Bible. And let's jump right in on Genesis 5. So it says, from Adam to Noah, this is the written account of Adam's line. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them. And when they were created, he called them man. So again, just repeating, Adam and Eve was God's original creation, the original human form, God embodied in flesh and bone. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. So he had another son at 130 years old. Me and my husband are considered old parents for our youngest, which is true because there's some kids that are like 26 with a 6 and 7 year old, and you know, we in our good old 40s. 130 years old, he the old daddy. He the old daddy. But then that just goes to show like how different it was then. Like even though there was the fall of man, and with the fall of man came death, to live a whole 130 years and then have a son. Like wow, mind blowing. Then it goes on to say, after Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived 930 years and then he died. So again, we see here, we know that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, but it also says he had Seth. And then it also says he had other sons and daughters. Well, who are they? What were their names? Did they have the same mama? Because you know there's that one story about that other lady that was technically Adam's like first wife. But then wouldn't that mean that maybe she was the second wife and not the first wife? Because we know that Eve was the original wife. Anyway, but it says he had other sons and daughters. And he lived 830 years and died at the age of 930. Could you imagine living that long? Almost 1,000 years? When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. And after he became the father of Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Seth lived 912 years and then he died. These ages are wild. So could you imagine even me being 43 to a person that he died at 912 years? So if I met a person, he's like, I'm 900 years old. What am I to him? Surely I'm not an adult to him. Like, wow. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. And after he became the father of Kenan, Enosh lived 815 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enosh lived 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan had lived 700 years, he became the father of, let's see if I can say this, Mahalalel. And after he became the father of, gotta say it again, Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Kenan lived 910 years and then he died. And it's all saying they had other sons and daughters, but the reason they're mentioning this particular lineage from Adam to Seth is because it's building to Noah. Because as it said in the heading, from Noah, from Adam to Noah. So that's why it's listing this. You know, you got cousins and stuff, or you got brothers and sisters, but those brothers and sisters then go off and have other kids, and then they have those kids' names. This is that lineage. So we're specifically focusing on going from Adam to Noah. And to get to Noah, you have to go through Seth's lineage. So where were we? When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he became the father of Jared. And after he became the father of Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Mahalalel lived 895 years and then he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. And after he became the father of Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Jared lived 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived 365 years. Enoch walked with God and then he was no more because God took him away. So many things to think about here. First of all, so far in the lineage, Enoch was the youngest to give birth in this lineage. And he gave birth to Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, he walked with God 300 years. It doesn't say that in the other descriptions of the other lineages, of the other children, of the other ancestors. He walked with God 300 years. What comes to my head right now is that song, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his friend. So it's like, Enoch, like, what was you doing? Like, what choices were you making? You know, we know that there's the book of Enoch, which I have it in my Ethiopian Bible, but it's just like, wow, how interesting. And then another thing I find interesting is that it says, altogether, Enoch lived 365 years. Why is that significant to me? Because there's 365 days in 1 year. So it was like 1 year, like a dedication to Enoch because of his faithful walk with God for 300 years. But he lived a total of 365 years. And there's 365 days in our calendar year. I don't know, that just stands out to me. And then it said, Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him away. Now, as we get into the Old Testament, we are going to go through the story of Enoch and how he disappeared before his not servant, but servant, Elijah, the person that was studying under him, which was Elijah, I believe, but hear the story. And so as Elijah describes it, it's like this chariot of fire comes and carries Enoch into the whirlwind, into heaven. And that's how he disappeared. And I don't want this to sound, it's going to sound childlike because like I said, this is a journey through the Bible to use your imagination. But things like that happened then. What's to say things like that can't happen now? And I remember one time I was praying and I was feeling sad about, you know, all the missing people that never get found again. And we know some of them go missing under extremely unfortunate situations where there's evidence that points to an event happening. It's just said person is unable to be located. But there are stories where, you know, right now everybody's in an uproar over all these scientists. And one of them just like walked in the wood, left his phone, walked in his wood, into the woods, and was never seen or heard from again. There's no, it's just like his existence just went away. There's no evidence of where he went or where he is or what he's doing. And so a long time ago, I was kind of thinking, you know, you see the missing people board, the missing children board in Walmart and things like that. And I stop and I look, send up a prayer. But, you know, I was thinking about that and I'm like, ooh, is it too far-fetched for me to ask, Father? Does things like what happened with Enoch still happen? We don't know. We don't know. But it's fun to think about. It is fun to think about. So then, when Methuselah had lived, and then God took him away. So now we're moving on at verse 25. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he became the father of Lamech. And after he became the father of Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Methuselah lived 969 years and then he died. It took everything I had in me not to make this joke before, but remember, well, for those of us that are of a particular age, you used to be like, oh, he's older than Methuselah. He's old as Methuselah. And that's to say like somebody's old, because he is the oldest man in the Bible. He's the longest living man in the Bible. And his name was Methuselah. And he lived 969 years. That is a long time to walk the earth. You know, they have these blue zone areas in the world, and blue zone areas are where people live to be upwards of 100. And it's like one somewhere near the Mediterranean. I think one's like, what's the name of it? Cyprus. I don't know. I was watching a run, and he was actually running at one of the blue zone areas. I believe it was a Tommy Ribs run. And yeah, those blue zone areas, those people, they live to be 100, if not more. And there was also a documentary on Netflix about it as well. I can't remember the name of it, but if you Google and research, it's a documentary on Netflix that the doctor goes to different lands and different regions, different cultures, and kind of finds out how they eat and how they live and how they're able to live so long. But these blue zone areas, people live to be upwards of 100. And it really is because of how they eat. They eat really healthy. They have, you know, olive oil the majority of their meals. Their wine is usually freshly pressed and local. They live near a beach. They're more about family than work. So if you were talking work life and family balance, it's way more family oriented than it is based on work. I think a lot of them still, it's like more still barter as opposed to commerce. I don't know, but it was a great documentary and a great run that I did to learn that. So let's finish this out. This one's actually short. So 28 says, when Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. He named him Noah and said, he will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed. So we know when it has like a little letter by it, we go to the bottom. Noah sounds like the Hebrew for comfort. And the author will always tell you the definition of what it's saying. So Lamech named him Noah and said, he will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed. After Noah was born, Lamech lived 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Lamech lived 777 years and then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I wonder why Noah waited until he was 500 years old to have kids. That's a long time to wait. You know how sometimes when people are from big families, like they have a whole bunch of siblings, and they see like how chaotic it is and how just you don't have a lot of time, depending on what number you are in the child order of things. You might be the kid that have to always get the hand-me-downs or whatever the case may be. And sometimes that causes people to be like, I'm not gonna have kids, or they wait a really, 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 really long time to have kids, or they more so wanna focus on like establishing their career, traveling and seeing places, then settling down, then having a family. But it is, let's see, 130. And it sounds like he is the oldest out of everyone in his lineage to have children. That's the oldest age listed, 500 years. And I love the name that his father gave him, which is Comfort. And if I was a mathematician, which chapter 6, we getting into the flood and everything, yeah, I'll get into my thoughts on the flood and Noah's father and Noah's brothers and sisters, and hopefully I remember that because it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. But this brings us to the end of chapter 5. And that was so interesting. And it's just breaking down how we get to Noah. This is how we got to Noah. All the way from Adam, his great grandfather, all the way through all of his other grandfathers, all the way down to his father. And his father called him a comforter. I love that. This was so short and sweet, but it also goes to show, like, when it says that all of us are written in the book, you know, eventually we'll get to Revelations and it says, like, everything that we've done, my husband's calling, I'm gonna call you back in like 5 minutes. Everything that we've done is written in the good book, and this is a good book. And it shows you that it matters to God, like, where you come from. And so for those of us that don't know our lineage, that don't know our ancestry, especially for those of us African Americans, where our culture was, our original culture that our ancestors came over with has been completely stripped of us. All connection that we have with native peoples, native tribes has been erased and replaced. And unfortunately for us, you know, they don't want to include us in that lineage, even the tribes that do exist right to this day. So it's so comforting for me, especially, to know that even though I may not know where I originate from, my original tribe and the lineage and the story passed down, the Lord knows. He knows where my hair color came from and my skin color and all of the different people that were in line ahead of me that became known to each other and gave birth to, and then gave birth to, and then gave birth to, and then gave birth to, all the way down to me. That is so comforting. It's so amazing to think about. I did ancestry one time, sent my DNA, got it back, and then was just wondering and looking at it and kind of marveling at it. And then I would go over to the country and look it up and look at all these different cool things. And then I would go back, and in my conspiracy mind, I would wonder, I've been here my whole life for probably 10 generations. Like, I don't really have any relatives that come and they're like, we're from here. So why does it say I'm only 1% American? And then after that, I was done with that little journey. I was like, okay, because make it make sense. But that brings us to the end of this. This was very, very fun. Their ages were very, very fun. And they must have really lived a holistic life. So a life rich with fruits and vegetables and things that they grew with their own hands, and very no food with no preservatives in it, because they didn't really have a way to preserve food. So everything was probably fresh every day, hunted for fresh every day, prepared fresh every day. And look at how long they lived. So that to me is amazing. That brings us to the end. This was so fast looking at the time. If you have enjoyed going through this journey with me, if you've been enjoying the videos, thank you so, so much. Give the video a like, leave a comment. Let me know what thoughts come into your mind, what imaginings you have as I read through the Bible. And hopefully this inspires you to start your own journey, to begin to read the Bible from a childlike state of mind and exercise your imagination. Take your thoughts captive. Keep your mind on things of above. It is gloomy outside, so from looking into the ring light and then looking down, I was like, it was struggle. It was a struggle for me to read it and see it. And I still enjoyed it through the struggle. So I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you so much if you've made it to this portion of the video. You could have spent your time doing anything else, but you decided to spend it right here with me, and I greatly appreciate it. And as always, make sure you find an opportunity to get out there and get after whatever your get after is, if you are able to get after it. I love you. God loves you so much more. Peace.
Sunshine, sunshine, sunshine.